Hello, my name is Ashley Seddon. I am the marketing associate at Panos Marketing. Today we will be listening to Paul Tonelli from Panos Marketing. He is our VP and creative director. And we'll also be listening to Matt Larrabee, who is our director of web services. Matt and Paul, I will let you take the floor.
Alrighty. Well, I'll introduce myself. As Ashley said, my name is Paul Tonelli. I'm the creative director at Panos Marketing. I've been working on the branding side essentially my whole career, on national brands, local brands. So the notion of bringing brand into your website and making sure that it's consistent with your overall brand is a big part of what my background is. And I'll let Matt introduce himself now as well.
Yeah, I'm Matt Larrabee. Like Ashley said, I'm the director of web services. I've been at Panos for almost 15 years now. We've launched over 150 websites for FIs in that time. So a lot we've learned over the years, and a lot about integrating brand with the website and how a website is a big part of your brand. And we're going to talk about that a lot today.
What's interesting, about your website is, as Matt suggested, it really is sort of your busiest branch. If you imagine your homepage being your branch entrance, it needs to speak, to those brand, capabilities, the voice of your brand and all the things that you work so hard to develop on the general brand side. Matt, why don't you kick off some of your knowledge of website building?
Yeah, definitely. And like Paul said, we've actually run some tracking, some analytics, some statistics on this, and we've done a couple of branches, and one of the branches we are one of the FIs that we ran this on, we saw that it was almost 1,000% more new visitors come to the website than come to their branches. So when you think about that, you think about the investment that you put in a new branch that you're creating somewhere. The first impression that most of your customers are going to have are from your website. We found that 1,000% more new customers come to your website than your branch. So if you think about that, if you're really trying to advertise to new customers, trying to pull in new customers, they're getting their first view of you through their website. And we all know in branding, Paul can speak to this definitely, first impressions are huge. So they're going to get your first impression through your website. So that's a very important part of it. And these days, we're going to talk about this a lot with Gen Z, millennials. They're really looking for self-service options. They're looking for quick interactions. They're not the ones going to your branches most of the time. So that's why really a website needs to be part of your branding, especially for the younger generations.
When we're developing a brand, we're starting more often than not with a discovery, right? So we're really digging into the details when it comes down to, what the culture is within your organization, what the vision is, from leadership or even across the organization, but more importantly, what the desires of your audience, what are they looking for? What are the problems that they need solved? So if we're digging into all those details, at the ground level, to make sure that people who walk into your branch experience your brand the way that you want it, to be experienced, then it would be pretty silly to not have your busiest branch, your website, not carry through with those sensibilities. So when we're doing those early discoveries, there's always the notion that we're going to be carrying this through across all platforms, and those touch points that are on the website, and essentially every page within the website, every word is representing your brand. So from a brand development standpoint, even though I'm not digging into the details of every piece of user experience, I do make sure that customer experience as far as the brand expression is there on every page and every paragraph. I know that when you think about your organization, it's usually, it's the people that work at the branch, or it's the foot soldiers, so to speak, that are actually working it on a day-to-day basis. But when a customer goes to your website, they're looking for something. there's a service that's happening, and that service needs to be brand related.
So there's an important aspect of brand that a website highly addresses that isn't as addressed as much in branches, and that's interactions and functionality. So we think of a brand a lot of times in visuals. That's probably the first thing that comes to our mind when we think of a brand: the logo, the colors, the look. Maybe we think of the content of that brand. But on a website, really what shines is the functionality and the interactions of that brand. So kind of a good example of that is think of Amazon. Really very, very simple brand visually, content-wise. But when you think of Amazon, and really their popularity comes from the simplicity of using Amazon. So it has artificial intelligence. It tracks what you're doing. It gives you related products and things that it knows that you're going to be interested in, and it makes it easy. So it has a one-click shopping cart. You can buy things too easily, definitely. I mean, I've bought things that I've regretted 5 minutes later because it's so easy. But that's what we think of when we think of Amazon. Really quick, easy to use, and smart. That's really Amazon's brand. It's not the visuals that you think of when you think of Amazon. It's really that cutting edge, quick, easy to use. And that's the same thing we want to do on a website. So you don't want your brand to feel sluggish. You don't want your brand to feel dated or convoluted. Those are definitely words you don't want associated with your business. So how do we do that? How do we affect that on the website side? Well, that's going to be things like page speed. It's going to be transitions and animations. It's going to be your UI, how easy it is to get to different things on your site. And definitely also kind of the functionality should be geared to your segments, who you're marketing to, your customers. And one more thing about a website, one of the most difficult things FIs have to deal with is a broad customer base. So unlike a lot of businesses, they're marketing to Gen Z, they're marketing to baby boomers, and everything in between there. That's very difficult when you want a brand that reaches all those people. On a website, there's a lot of ways that we can address that you can't do that in a branch. In a branch, you can't have it change when somebody enters the door if they're 70-year-old or if they're a 20-year-old. That just can't happen. On a website, that can happen. We use personalization to segment our audience, so we know who's coming into our websites, and we can gear our brand, our messaging toward that person. So I'll keep running with this for a little bit because I can just talk forever on personalization, and then I'll give Paul some time after that. But definitely just some practical examples of how we do that on our websites. So let's talk about Gen Z, younger generation. They're really into quick hitting information and interactions. They need education and self-help. That's what they're looking for when they come to a website. So some things we might do, a lot of times they're just there to look at digital services, or maybe they're going to online banking. So in the online banking login, maybe we have some quick trivia there that's education based. Really quick snippets that just give a little one-liner trivia item about different services that they might not know are available. Same thing with education, hitting them with those little one-liners, quickly, easily digestible information that's there. And things like interactive calculators and comparison charts and gamification, which we get into, which kind of helps them feel like they're solving a problem and they're making progress as they're going through the website. And as opposed to that, if you have someone who's a millennial or an older person, you might want something that we do that's called a My Branch, where all their interactions are tied to their branch. They can select their branch, their local branch. They see events that are happening locally. They see news. They see They can easily see their branch managers at any time. That's kind of the feel that you want when you're I won't say older, because I am an older millennial Gen Xer, but they're more used to interactions and talking to someone face to face. So those are the types of things that we'll add on for those. Paul, I'll let you talk because
I'll jump in a little bit. Yeah. So what I'd like to sort of attach to all of that, because I think that's amazing, to be able to sort of talk to different segments differently and give them the response that is best, suited for them. That brand connection, though, is pretty consistent, across the board. All the findings and all the different things that that we've heard and that we do is about building, a differentiation for your brand. There's a lot of FIs out there, and they basically offer the same products and services. So separating yourself from the pack is what, strong brand development does. You want to make sure that it answers the question, what makes your brand different? Also keep in mind that, it takes 5 to 7, times for, someone to connect with your brand, to touch your brand and actually have it sink in. So whether it's, walking into a branch, calling a rep, or going, more often than not, going to the website, you can hit that 5 to 7 pretty quick. So consistency across the board is important, but you also want to promote brand recognition so that when they leave and they see your logo somewhere, and even though, we often say that, your logo is not your brand, it's just a sort of a symbol of your brand. When they look at it, or they see, your color scheme or your design, it reminds them of that experience, whether it's walking through the branch or, to all the points Matt, has, kind of mentioned, those consistencies, across the brand that make life easier for the customer, starts to be remembered. So it's a constant drumbeat. And I think that's, where brand recognition becomes, a part of people's lives. And then they have a difficult time actually separating from it. It's like, well, that's my brand, I'm connected to them and I'm not going anywhere because they make my life a little easier. The other things, your website supports marketing efforts. So the money and time that's spent to put your brand out into the marketplace, you're doing digital ads and you're doing landing pages and, in-branch posters and, maybe, some traditional digital, print ads in TV or radio. Your website is aligning with all those messages that are out there. And that consistency, again, is really important. The other aspect of branding is that it gets your troops on board. As you go through the discovery process and you involve the people that work for the organization, they start to feel ownership. So when they go to the website, they walk into the branch, they see that brand statement out in the marketplace, the promise that you give to your audience, they start to feel part of the solution. And certainly with the website being as active as it is, that's where it's felt the most.
Paul said that the consistency, the pounding of the drum, the consistent marketing, definitely on your website. It's not just your website these days. It's not just what you see. There's a lot in the background. So we talked about personalization a little bit, but there's also things like marketing automation. So like Paul said, a lot of your potential customers are not just going to walk into your branch. They're going to see you first online. They're going to see your website. They might drive by your branch, know your logo, but then they're going to be browsing the web. Maybe they see a news article or a blog article about something that's happening in the community, an event that your FI is sponsoring or that you donated to a company that they're interested in, a charity. These things are all part of brand and they all tie together and they're all really tied to the website in some way. So they shouldn't be independent parts. We talked about a holistic approach, and that's something that's very important and I feel has lacked a lot in FIs. They treat their website as a different entity as their branches. And that should really be a consistent thing between the two. So if you are marketing in your branch, you have great CSRs, they're happy people, joyful when you go into the branch. That same feel should go throughout your website, but also emails generated from your website or blog articles or really any attachment to that. So it really is about consistency.
Interesting that the about page usually is where you get to tell your story. When people go there, they get to see the highlights of the people behind the brand. So there's that extension from the branch directly to the website. I know it's a pretty minor thing, but when people are experimenting with a new company and they're researching, they often go right to that about page. So, well, what's the deal with these guys? And you can realize that you're closely related to their the attributes that make them who they are.
And one thing that's really very important when we talk about branding, when we talk about people being local, it's a little bit different for FIs because you're not only tied to the bank as a whole, a lot of times you're tied to your local branch. That's kind of your feeling of the FI that you get is really tied into your local community, local branch. So on a website, that's important as well. And that we use localized content a lot of times. So that's my branch on the website that goes to your specific branch, your location that has events that are happening near you. So when they're doing a Google search and they're searching about park days or block parties, your FI is going to come up because you have on your locations page for that branch, you have events about block parties in the area, things like that. So really you need to have a local feel too on your website. It shouldn't be just your global message. It should extend locally to each branch and each market that you're in. And luckily websites can do that very efficiently and in a great way.
I think you made a really good point in that the website has this sort of correlation to the physical community because that's a community that you live in, and when you visit the web experience, you start to kind of build that emotional connection between the two. So it's not that's this digital thing and this is the human thing. It really becomes one and the same and a little bit more seamless than you would think.
So Paul, I would ask you, if there's one thing you wanted people to come away with from our blabbering today, what would that be?
I think just reinforcing what I just said is that there's a seamless experience. Of course, when you go to the website, if you're a customer, then there's something that you want to do, right? There's an action that you want to take. So that fulfillment of the brand is through those actions or through the services that the website provides. So from a brand standpoint, if I was a customer that had a connection with a person at the branch, and I have a relationship with my FI in a way that most people do. I mean, I understand generationally it's less and less. But if you're living in a community and you have a community bank, you have some sense of that. Even if you don't walk into the branch, there's a feeling that you have because you've been given good service and you have a perception of that organization that's really high. When I go to the website, I want it to be fulfilled. I don't want it to be a letdown. It can't be that it's not a bait and switch, right? Okay, they got me over here, but then now they lost me when I got to the website, and I feel like I've been duped a little bit. So that consistency across all touch points is really, really valuable. Yeah. So I'll ask you. So if you're building a website, how much of the actual brand experience are you, the physical brand experience, are you thinking about those conceptual things as you're building a website?
Definitely, and we do the same thing. We do a discovery when we're making a website, and really part of that discovery is a good chunk of it is learning the brand of the FI. So learning how they work, learning what their goals are, how they want to be seen, how they are in the community. And we need to, our goal is to bring that seamlessly into the website. So it's an extension of a branch. It's their busiest branch. But kind of definitely what I'd want people to get out of this is don't underestimate your website when it comes to your brand, and don't limit what it's doing. So a lot of times we kind of have a website that's just visually maybe is on point with the brand, but interactions, how it's used, isn't really living up to the goals of the FI. Maybe we're not using localized content. We're not really reaching out those arms that the website has into those different facets of the brand. So really, I would say don't underestimate what your website can do for your brand is probably the one thing that I want to get out of this call today.
I think ending there is really, the perfect note. I think between, both sides of the coin, so to speak, you can see that, if, sort of the sensibilities of brand are sort of brought through the website, and I think you have a winning combination.
Thank you, Paul and Matt, for taking the time today to discuss the synergy between brand and website. I think it's a really important conversation, a conversation that I think a lot of FIs should be having more often. And so I really appreciate you both taking the time today. You can reach all of us through our emails. Paul is ptonelli@panosmarketing.com. And Matt is mlarrabee@panosmarketing.com. You can check out any of our work at www.panosmarketing.com/work. You can see all of Paul's wonderful contributions to our clients' branding, and you can also see Matt's amazing work on the websites that we have produced for our clients. So I appreciate you taking the time today to attend this webinar, and we look forward to having conversations with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, all.
Thanks, Matt.